Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson, MD. Life doesn't always turn out the way we think it will. When change happens, many of us tend to resist that change. Why? Simply put, we are afraid of change. Change represents the unknown, which challenges our feelings of safety and security. This is a simple story about change. It teaches you how to see, anticipate, and adapt to change so you can thrive. The author Spencer Johnson shares a story of 4 characters. 2 mice named Sniff and Scurry, and 2 little people who are the same size as mice named Hem and Haw. These 4 characters represent parts of us. They represent the simple and complex within each of us. As Spencer Johnson put it, sometimes we may act like Sniff, who sniffs out change early, or Scurry, who scurries into action, or Hem, who denies and resists change as he fears it will lead to something worse, or Haw, who learns to adapt when he sees changing can lead to something better. The 4 characters leave their homes in the morning and search around the maze day in and day out, searching for cheese. The maze was an easy place for anyone to get lost. However, for those who found their way, the maze held secrets that let them enjoy a better life. The cheese is a metaphor for what we want to have in life, whether that be great relationships, a successful career, freedom, health, a big house, etc. The cheese represents the stuff in our lives that makes us happy. It's what we're always chasing. The maze represents where we spend most of our time looking for that so-called cheese. Let's dive into the story. Sniff, Scurry, Hem, and Haw got up early each morning, put on their running shoes, and ran around the maze, looking for their favorite cheese. The mice used trial and error to find their cheese. One would sniff, and the other would scurry around. The little people used their smarter brains to find the cheese. Eventually, they both found a large amount of cheese at Cheese Station C. All was good. They all went back to the Cheese Station C every morning, got fat on cheese, and returned home every night. This went on for a while. As time went on, Sniff and Scurry continued to wake up bright and early each morning. They scurried over to the cheese station, sniffed around to see if anything had changed, and then enjoyed their cheese throughout the day. On the other hand, Hem and Haw started waking up later each morning. They would walk over to the cheese station, expecting their cheese to be there. Cheese Station C had so much cheese. They were confident it would continue to be there each morning. Hem and Haw even became somewhat arrogant in their success of finding the cheese, maybe a little too comfortable as well. Unfortunately, one day the cheese was all gone. When the mice arrived early that morning, they weren't surprised. They had noticed that their cheese supply was getting lower as they did their morning inspections. They simply put their running shoes back on and set out into the maze searching for new cheese. They didn't make the issue complicated. The problem and the solution were simple. No more cheese. Okay, go find new cheese. As the author stated, the situation at Cheese Station C had changed, so Sniff and Scurry decided to change. When Hem and Haw arrived later that day, they were in absolute shock. Their entire world had been turned upside down. They weren't aware of the changes happening in their environment and assumed the cheese would always be there. Hem complained, "What, no cheese? No cheese? Who moved my cheese?" He hollered for a while and finally said, "It's not fair." Haw was just as stunned. He stood there in shock. He couldn't believe it. They went home that night, hoping it would be back the next day. But sadly, it wasn't there. The cheese was gone, and gone for good. Hem began blaming others, saying, "We are entitled to our cheese. Why did they do this to me? What's going on here?" Sniff and Scurry had been on the move and had already found new cheese at Cheese Station N. Hem and Haw face a lot of the same emotions that many of us have when change slaps us in the face. They didn't want to accept reality. They were in total denial. They didn't want to go back into the maze and look for new cheese because that meant uncertainty, getting lost, and potentially making a fool of themselves. The fear of failure had taken a hold. They returned back to the empty Cheese Station C every day because it was familiar to them. It was within their comfort zone. Haw began to come to his senses. He understood the error of his ways and began laughing when he realized what fear was doing to him. Haw tried to convince Hem to leave the station too, in search of new cheese, but Hem didn't want to listen. Haw thought about his fears and asked himself the powerful question, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Haw built up some courage, started to believe that he could find new cheese, envisioned himself finding new cheese, and then set off into the dark maze alone, uncertain of what's to come. Although the journey into the unknown was scary at first, that sense of adventure began to energize him. He wished he had set out in search for new cheese earlier and said to himself, better late than never. But never late is better. By this point in the story, Haw had already learned some valuable lessons. Expect change. Look for signs that change is coming. Or, in the words of Spencer Johnson, smell the cheese often so you know when it's getting old. And finally, adapt to change quickly. While on his new cheese quest, Haw reflected on why he didn't leave sooner. He realized that his fears were holding him back. As Spencer Johnson stated in the book, what you are afraid of is never as bad as what you imagine. The fear you build up in your mind is worse than the situation that actually exists. Fear had been seriously clouding his mind. Haw lived in a state of fear and focused on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. He finally realized that you have two choices. You can believe that change will harm you, in which case you'll resist it. Or you can believe that change will help you, in which case you'll embrace it. As Haw searched the maze, he realized he was happy when he wasn't being limited by his fears. Sure, some fear is healthy and should be taken seriously, since it can keep you out of danger. But Haw knew that most of his fears were irrational. They stopped him from making the changes he needed to. So, he let go and trusted in what lay ahead, even though he didn't know what it was. Haw didn't let fear stop him from his quest. Conquering his fear is what energized his soul and gave him strength. He realized that change could lead to something better. As he continued to look for new cheese, he learned some key lessons. The quicker you let go of old cheese, the sooner you can find new cheese. Movement in a new direction helps you find new cheese. Imagining yourself enjoying your new cheese leads you to it. It is safer to search in the maze than to remain in a cheeseless situation. When you see that you can find and enjoy new cheese, you change your course. Old beliefs do not lead to new cheese. Noticing small changes early helps you adapt to bigger changes that are likely to come. Haw tried to go back and show Hem the new lessons he had learned. Sadly, Hem was still stuck in his old ways. Hem wanted his old cheese back and wasn't willing to change. Haw finally gave up and realized that Hem would have to find his own way in order to move beyond his comfort zone and face his fears. No one else could do it for him. Haw had come to understand that the biggest obstacle to change lies within yourself, and that nothing gets better until you change. On the other hand, the mice kept things simple. They didn't overcomplicate. They didn't try to overanalyze. They changed as the situation changed. The little people made these simple things quite complicated with their smart brains, belief systems, and emotions. The little people are obviously smarter than the mice, but they're directing their energies in the wrong way. At one point in the story, the author stated that Haw chuckled and realized that he had started to change as soon as he had learned to laugh at himself for what he had been doing wrong. He realized that the fastest way to change is to laugh at your own errors and shortcomings. Then you can let go and quickly move on. Haw continued on his journey day in and day out. He finally understood that breaking out of your comfort zone and enjoying the journey for new cheese is rewarding too. Actually, finding the new cheese is like a bonus. Finally, Haw stumbled upon Cheese Station N, where Sniff and Scurry were hanging out enjoying their cheese. They were still ready for change. So was Haw. They kept a good eye on things, and Haw continued to venture out into the maze every now and then to see if anything had changed. He was aware and ready to adapt at any moment. One day, Haw heard a noise outside of Cheese Station N. It sounded like someone was coming. Could it be Hem, he thought? He said a prayer and looked around the corner to see. That's where the book ends. Did Hem show up, or was it someone else? That's for you to decide. Think about this. Not all change is good, or even necessary. But in a world that is continually changing, it is to our advantage to learn how to adapt and enjoy something better.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you found the video to be helpful.